This on 97.5 The Fanatic.
As much as the Flyers hockey is back, it is still the pregame show with just Jason Martinez.
I'm just glad there's nobody in that open that's not here anymore. It's the only, if I was just listening.
Yeah, well, Hayes is back, so that's good, and he's in all alone.
He is in all alone. He has the capability to do that now.
Well, that's a good Tim Saunders phrase. All alone and sidesteps a man.
Yes.
That's another Tim Saunders phrase.
Yep.
And I've always kidded Tim about it, but I love it. It's Brian Smith and Jason Martinez. It is Flyers game day. And let's just say, Bri, here to start the game day show. It's the Flyers and the Leafs tonight. And I don't do this often. And there's actually been occasions this year where I said, I don't even know what to say. But I got something to say.
You got something to talk about today, right?
I do. Yeah, because if you looked up the phrase or terminology, damned if you do, damned if you don't, in the dictionary, and you submitted today's Twitter discourse amongst Flyers Twitter, it would be the ultimate case of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
You have a point.
So this is obviously in regards to Keith Yandle, who will be scratched for the first time since March of 2009. Keith Yandle's played, 989 games straight?
989. Tonight would have actually been his 1100th career game, but that's a little bit secondary. He'll still hit that.
That's a side burner.
It's funny how these scandals crop up because today was the day where I woke up about 6:30, left my house at 7. I had to drive out to Reading, Pennsylvania, and drive back. And then I was watching my daughter's game for a couple hours. I wasn't really looking at Twitter. In my mind, there was no crisis at all. Like, it was just another Saturday. The biggest crisis I had was getting in here while the Sixers were playing. And then I started getting some texts about it, like, what's going on? And that's like my question back was, what's going on? Because I hadn't been on Twitter. I hadn't seen the announcement yet. So it's funny how it's a crisis if you're on Twitter, but if you're just going about your day normally, it's another game. But what happened?
So look, I just got another message from a guy going, did the Yandle kick your dog? I'm a hockey fan. It'd be cool to see a player with a great career reach 1,000 games in a row. This is like pulling a pitcher in the ninth inning of a no-hitter because you want to get your bullpen guys some reps. No, it's not, dummy. It's not like that at all.
See, I would make that point if the record was 999.
Yeah.
The record was 964. He's already passed the record. 1,000 games is a nice big round number, but other than that, it doesn't have a meaning.
Look, and I get the point. Like, I'm not all for scratching Keith Yandle. No, frankly, no. I don't give a crap if they scratch Keith Yandle for this game or any other game. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. But I understand the thought. You want to see Ronnie Adder get in the lineup, and he kind of takes Yandle's spot. Not actually, but they keep Sealer in, who they may want to keep beyond this year. And I think we know that Keith Yandle is going to not be a Flyer next season. So, and this outrage of, I've seen it all year. Why is Yandle in the lineup? He shouldn't be in the lineup. He's only in the lineup because he's got this consecutive game streak. And maybe at points, absolutely, totally agree. And you're giving the guy the respect to break the record, and he did a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. And then, it's just so Flyers Twitter to go, why is this guy in the lineup? Beating your hands. He needs to come out of the lineup. That's the problem with this organization. And then the minute they scratch him, why the hell are they taking him out of the lineup?
I will point out that it's only half of Flyers Twitter. This is a very polarizing issue. Because I've seen half of Flyers Twitter say he should have been out of there a long time.
I agree.
To me, I only have two positions on the matter. One is that this is not Mike Yeo taking Keith Yandle out of the lineup. Mike Yeo has now been ripped by two former NHLers publicly on Twitter.
Both have played here, Koliakovo and Roenick.
This is not Mike Yeo waking up and taking Keith Yandle out of the lineup. This is a organizational decision, as Mike said in his press conference today. This is from Chuck Fletcher all the way on down, with consideration to probably Brent Flair with the development guys and the Flyers coaching staff themselves. They all got together and decided this was the best course of action. This is not a unilateral Mike Yeo thing. The other kind of thing that my position on it is that he's at 989. There's 16 games left, something like that.
15. I think.
Phil, I don't think Keith Yandle is going to be on an NHL roster next year, number one. Number two, Phil Kessel cannot catch him this year. he would catch him next year. If Yandel just played out the string, got to 1,004, and Kessel comes back next year, which he's probably going to do, he would still pass Yandel at some point next year.
Yep.
And he's still going to pass Yandel at some point next year if he comes back.
But Kessel's not breaking a record that stood for 37 years.
It's just to me, it's like, all right, we got Yandel to the point where Kessel can't catch him this year. It would have to be next year. And so now, to me, there's no difference between 989 and 1,004, other than that that one with 3 round zeros after it is a number that people look at as a milestone. So I like the fact that Kessel can't catch him this year, and past that is like what we've been saying, that the Flyers' sole objective here over this last month of the season is to set themselves up for next year, and this is part of it. Looking at this group together and seeing how they play together against a good Maple Leafs team.
And it's gathering data, gathering information,
gathering video,
exposing these young players to what the NHL is, so that they go into the offseason knowing what they need to work on. I remember talking to Joel Farabee about this. It wasn't Farabee. It was Cam York. And he said, I got a couple games last year, and it really changed my focus in my offseason training for this year, because I knew what it felt like to play in an NHL game.
I follow this concept with my daughter on her 7th grade softball team.
Yep.
That I wanted, she can go to the batting cages Friday or Monday and practices on Tuesday. I wanted to go on Friday because then she's got Saturday and Sunday to keep in her head what it was like to hit.
Yeah.
It's not, it is a concept that is valuable at any level of sports.
Yeah.
And really any level of anything.
It's more knowledge for the player than
You ever go on a vacation and you know where you're going, but you've never been there before?
Yeah, last week.
And you get there, and then it's like, next time I'll do this differently. And then the next time you go to that same place, you do all this other stuff differently. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
You know now what it's like to play in an NHL game. You have a feel for the speed. You have a feel for the atmosphere,
muscle,
the skill level of the other players. You have all this stuff that you can watch it on TV all day long, and people can tell you about it all day long, but you don't really know it in your brain until you go through it a few times. And so that is, that is what's valuable about this.
I got a tweet from one guy who is on Twitter at Coach Vin. He's a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm absolutely dumbfounded that he's a coach.
Oh, my.
Because he said this. He said, so the last place Flyers have a guy going for 1,000 consecutive games, and they decide to sit him and end this streak. It's a disgrace. Would it matter if the organization in all sports let this guy play one shift tonight just so it could continue? The fact that you're a coach of sports and you think that's okay, do you think Keith Yandel would like to sit there, go out, twirl around for 30 seconds, and then sit his butt back on the bench and just sit there for basically 60 minutes of a hockey game? I mean, the sport is about pride. It's about the team. No sport is still about team more than the NHL. Basketball's individual, football's individual, baseball's got individual elements. Yeah. Hockey has always been about the collective. It's why when the guys win the cup, they never say I, it's we.
And it's different in hockey just because on a hockey game, you dress 18 skaters.
And they all play.
And every skater has a specific role to play. And so if you decide to do that, now you've got to play the rest of your game with 5D. And that doesn't help a guy like Ronnie Adder now, who's got to go out there and, play with 4 different partners in his NHL debut. It does. It's not like baseball or football where you've got guys that sit on the sideline that don't play in a given game. You have more players than you need. If you bring out 18 players in an NHL game, you're going to use every single one of them for usually at least 7 minutes of play. That's usually the low end of what you see a 4th liner get or something like that. I get his sentiment, but that doesn't quite fly. And really, the one thing I'm seeing is a lot of people talking about how Kessel's streak is still going through the birth of his child a few weeks ago, where that
was one game.
Yeah, and that was a special circumstance. Yeah. That wasn't like it would be different doing that in this circumstance.
All right, one more, and then we're going to take a break, and I'm going to regroup. But one guy, Scrapple Sports on Twitter, said that they should. Don't take him out. And if you want to, rest somebody to keep Yandel in, they should rest either Provorov or Sandholm. Now, I love Scrapple. I had scrapple this morning from the
Did
Amish
you?
market.
Okay.
Scrapple, egg, and cheese on
Yeah.
dry toast. I love scrapple. But you think taking Provorov and Sanheim out of the lineup to make way for Keith Yandel, who again already broke the record. And again, here's the biggest thing. Keith Yandel has handled this with total class. He knew it was coming at some point.
Mm-hmm.
All good things end. The players don't get to determine when it's over.
Right.
They're elite athletes. They've been their whole life. And they all think they can play forever. But eventually the game decides when you're done. The game decided when Wayne Gretzky was done. The game decided when Mario Lemieux was done. It took a long time for the game to decide Gordie Howe was done. But eventually the game decided.
Yeah.
And this had to come to an end as well.
You know, and again, it's not a situation where, you know, anything is really at stake. It's just that round number. You know, the idea of hitting 1,000 games consecutively is great, but it's not like, you know, when Claude Giroux was playing his 1,000th game here. That's an NHL milestone. That's a highly recognized thing that he wanted to hit in a Flyers uniform. You know, 1,000 consecutive games, again, it would have been something that nobody else has done.
Somebody called me a hypocrite.
Nobody else has done 989.
Somebody called me a hypocrite for not roasting the Flyers and saying that the stands shouldn't matter because they waited to Giroux to get to 1,000. I think the organization owes Giroux a little more than they owe Keith Yandel. And if you don't realize that, then I can't help you.
Right.
And if you want to call me a hypocrite for thinking that Giroux is owed a little bit more from the organization than Keith Yandel, then so be it. And this sounds like I don't like Keith Yandel. I love Keith Yandel.
Yeah,
and I'm going to talk to him this week about all of this.
And I guess just to wrap up the conversation before we take the break and let you reset, I mean, this is a lot different than last year when Joel Quenneville was going to scratch him at the start of the year in
Game
the
one.
streak. And it was just going to be Joel Quenneville's decision. Again, this was a group decision, and you know, our understanding from the media availability today was that he sat down with Chuck Fletcher and discussed it.
Yep.
Like, you know, this has been handled as well as you possibly could handle it in terms of bringing it to a conclusion.
Frankly,
so,
it was discussed in the offseason before he signed.
Sure.
That it could come down to this too.
And to me, for him, if he wants to get a job next year, it's better.
Totally agree.
Because
I tweeted that out earlier.
Some team might not
have
want to
the
sign
baggage
him
of
if
it.
it's going to be, oh, we're going to be the team that ends it. You know, they signed him free and clear of that streak. Then, you know, maybe it's a boon for his career next year. Maybe he does get a seventh defenseman job somewhere in the NHL and can
A
keep
good
going.
guy in the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree. It takes the pressure of the streak out of the equation. All right, let's reset. We'll take a timeout. We're back with more from the East Food Hall, Wells Fargo Center. Flyers Leafs tonight. We're back on Flyers Game Day. Brian Smith, Jason Martinez after this on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.
The Flyers Broadcast Network.
Chloe here with Cross Country Mortgage. Against all
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that was a hell of a break.
Oh boy,
That was fun. Sometimes you just need to decompress a little bit, and we did. And it's the Flyers and the Leafs tonight in Bry. I'm going to give you like Captain Obvious.
Okay.
All right. You got to stay out of the box against the Leafs. They have the number one power
We
play.
were
in the
just
league.
discussing this, weren't we? Like in the last month, how the best power play in the league used to be like 22, 23%. And now it's
looking at 30.
Now it's the middle of the road, and these guys are rolling along at 30% in April.
Yeah.
Usually you can be 30%, but like for, I don't know, 6 weeks. And then by November, you're coming back to earth.
We're talking to John Torchetti before the game tonight. Tim Saunders, Keith Jones, and Jim Jackson and myself. And I asked him about the power play. And you would think, like, the big key to their power play is Austin Matthews, right? 50
You would
goals.
think.
He said it's all predicated on Mitch Marner.
Really?
Yep. Everything kind of funnels through Marner. And he said something that you and I have talked about on broadcast so many times. They're never standing still.
Right.
They're all in motion all the time.
Mm-hmm.
No static player just standing there waiting for a delivery of a puck from yet another player standing still. Everything is constantly in motion. It is a beautiful power play to watch, I will tell you that. But for the opposition, and Torchetti said this, you cannot take any penalties unless you are thwarting a high danger scoring chance.
Otherwise, it's not worth it.
In other words, move your feet.
And you know, it might go through Marner, and you would think it'd be Matthews, but
it goes to Matthews,
yeah,
but through Marner.
And the leading power play point getter this year for this team, William Nylander.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Yeah,
I mean, and I guess you would expect it at 30%, but their top five. I'm assuming this is PP1 for them. Their top five power play point guys are all 20 points or more. And then it falls off to 9 after that. I mean, it's not even like, I don't even think this is a two-headed monster like a PP1 and a PP2. It's just all one group of 5 that's getting this done, which is even more impressive when you got one power play unit that's probably responsible for most of the 30%.
Hey, real quick, Pat, do we have another break? We do? Okay, we're going to take it in a second. I'm going to give you a radio tease before we do it. Actually, we'll take it right up to the open to give it to Tim and Coates, all right, Pat? So just text me what time that is. I was talking to Bush earlier today, and I asked him, I said, Matthews is the first guy to 50 this year. I think McDavid's got what, or Draisaitl's got 40 now. But I said, what is it about this guy he's like, he can just shoot it from anywhere, any position that his body is in. His release points change, and he gets the same amount on every shot. He's like, you got to realize, and Torchetti called him a hoss. Like, he's a big dude. Like, he doesn't look that big, right? Matthews, he's a big boy. And he can absolutely snap it. I think he's got the best release right now in the NHL. And that's saying something because, you got Ovechkin, I think, just overpowers you more. And you've got Laine, who's just got an incredible release, and some guys with really good releases and shots. But Matthews can just get you in so many different ways with the way he releases the puck. And Bush has said, and it never suffers any accuracy or power.
Yeah, that's a special player that when you have that kind of muscle memory, if you will, that you can rely on that. And there's different ways to be a dominant player. Matthews obviously has that ability. Connor McDavid's got his speed. There's different ways that you can be a threat on a team. But to me, something like what Matthews does is perhaps the most unpredictable. Even though it is consistency, because again, you see Connor McDavid get the puck, and he's going to be fast.
Yep.
And it's just at
it
that
scares
point,
the hell out of you.
Yeah, and you play fast, either the same way it seems. And you probably still aren't going to be effective against him anyway. But with Matthews, being able to unleash that shot the way that he does, he can do it from anywhere at any time. do it in stride. He can do it on his strong foot. He can do it on his weak foot. He can do
His
it.
body being closed or open, doesn't matter.
Exactly. So as a goaltender, that's got to be very tough to read, and as a defensive unit, it's got to be hard to defend it.
Yeah, watch how many times, Brian. Like if you just go on YouTube and watch his highlights too of his goals, you'll see how many times he's pulling the puck from far away from his body into his body, but changing the actual moment of release based on where the defender is.
Right. Yep.
And that's what I swear. I think incredible goal scorers in hockey, they have abilities to read the goaltender and his weight distribution. Because everything's going so slow in their mind, they can see when his weight's loaded on his right leg and pushing to his left, and know that it's really hard anatomically to go back to the right. So they know when that is. That's why they're. It doesn't make sense. I remember talking to Patrick O'Sullivan, who played in the league. He played for Team USA at U16 tournament.
Manchester Monarchs.
Yes, and he was a great junior player, right? And Sully said to me, he said, I played against Alexander Ovechkin in a best-on-best tournament at U16 age, international. And he goes, and we were best players in the United States. And they were pretty chesty, feeling good. Program was on the way up. And Ovechkin scored 11 goals, and they lost 12-1. And he goes, I just couldn't fathom that there was a guy on the planet that was that much better than everybody at scoring. He said, you can't wrap your head around it. He's got something else.
You're kind of in the Matrix a little bit almost, right? Because you're reading the weight distribution, like you said, or you can be in a shooting lane and you can see that you've got a teammate to the goalie's left, and the goalie is at least aware that he's there. So instead of shooting to the goalie's left, you might look there and then go to the right.
Yeah, everybody goes, I'm going to shoot where the goalie's not at, not where the goalie is leaving.
Right.
Sometimes you shoot where he's going because he's going in that direction, and that's what looks open. But where you should shoot is where he is because he's vacating.
Right.
And that's like the sixth sense that some guys have. Like you can't wrap your head around it because every guy can shoot the puck hard. They all got great shots. They're the best players, at their age group.
Right.
But for a guy to just be that much better, there's got to be some kind of sixth sense that he has that obviously nobody else on the planet has had.
You at least haven't had a chance to develop it, and that's the difference
it's
between
like the beer league.
Yeah, that's the difference between the really good and the elite, right?
Yeah.
There's different levels of good, and
there's greatness, which is
what you see in here is close to that.
Yeah, and so it reminds me of Egan and beer league quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
All right,
let's in the corners.
Yes. First shift, you got to earn the rest. This is why Pat Austin only gets one shift. All right, stay tuned. Tim Saunders, Steve Coates. It is hockey night in Philadelphia, as a matter of fact. It's the Flyers and the Leafs from Wells Fargo Center. Tim Saunders, Steve Coates, countdown to face-off and all the first period action coming up. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com. Flyers Broadcast Network.
You're listening to 97.5 The Fanatic.
Good job.